Chapter 1. A Sight for Sore Eyes. Looks count for something. They say you only have one chance to make a first impression. You can love someone as much as the day is long, but at the end of the day, we all want someone to look at. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but that sounds like something ugly people say. Now, what you consider beautiful is up to you, but when you first meet a potential partner, do they compliment you in public or vice versa? Do you make excuses to yourself and then to others for being seen with that person or vice versa? Call me shallow, but why should you question your attraction to someone if you're undoubtedly attracted to them? There are plenty of wonderful personalities in the world, but you need bait if you want to catch a fish. Of course, in our elderly years, that which is perceived to be attractive will eventually wither away. None of us will be the best looking anything in the world, but that still is no excuse to look the worst. Look the best you can look, but don't fear rejection at the cost of your own laziness. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. The 4 levels of a man's attraction. When a man looks at a woman, he surveys her. Women may look at men like this, but I do know for sure as a man that this is how men look at women. He categorizes a woman and puts her in a certain place in his mind and keeps her there. A simple way to put it would be to call it levels. Now, don't get it misconstrued that because I'm calling them levels, one is better than the other. The advantage to dating is selection. The way one man may look at you may be entirely different from another. It's all about how you look at yourself. So to explain these levels, let's go in, shall we? Level 1, the jump off. You have good hygiene, a wet vagina, and or a wet mouth. You're something to do for the evening. Need I say more? Level 2, arm candy. He's still sexually attracted, but now you're a compliment to his appearance, so he doesn't mind being seen in public with you. In so being, he doesn't mind doing girlfriend-ish things with you, enough to put a smile on your face. Level 3, girlfriend material. Your personality is enough of substance to gain that particular man's interest. He now sees you worthy of his time in order to get to know you for the sake of a relationship and not just sex. Level 4, wife material. He's now revolving his life around you, personally and occupationally. You are now in his logistical plans for the future, and he's divulging his most personal and vulnerable jewels with you. Just because you're wife material doesn't necessarily involve the actual legal process of marriage. It just means that he's that invested in you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that you would be worthy of sharing his name with yours, and everything that comes with it. The first 2 levels are pretty easy to attain, being as that they rely upon the physical attributes. The next 2 levels are a little more out of your control, being as that they pertain to the synergy of personality and characteristics between you and that guy. Like I said, your level may be different to every guy. I wouldn't recommend asking a guy questions pertaining to what level you're on. You can simply judge his actions, and that will be enough to show you. Asking questions that are what I like to call suicidal are unfair because they put that man in a position to unnecessarily hurt your feelings, whether he gives you a pleasant answer or not. In the end, you're only hurting yourself. Men. Always keep in mind that looks will fade with age, and if you want your woman to look better than you, make sure you're on point as well. If you want her nails done, do your own. If you want her hair done, make sure your tape-up is tight. If you want her to get in shape, shouldn't you be as well? Women. You must understand that a man values his time, and one thing that can consume his time the most is getting to know your personality. I am definitely not justifying a man for being a jerk, but in order for him to be willing to contribute his time, he must foresee some type of worth. It's almost like an innate survival instinct. Exercise and nutrition is your friend. You can't profess loving yourself if you don't take care of yourself. And if you don't love yourself, it is impossible for someone to love you, better yet, for you to love someone. For every excuse you have not to work out and eat healthy, there are 10 more reasons to work out and eat healthy. Loving yourself also comes from exercise and nutrition. Exercise and nutrition are things you must educate yourself on. However, any change you plan on undergoing, be sure that the change is done for yourself and your own confidence and self-esteem. Plastic surgery is thus just that, plastic. And if the change doesn't come from within, then what is done on the outside won't matter. You must be complete within yourself before entering a relationship. A relationship is not meant to complete you. You aren't any less of a woman simply because you don't have a man. You must be complete before entering a relationship in order to complete the relationship. Incomplete people do desperate things and perpetuate destructive cycles in their lives. And the saddest part is that they never know they are incomplete. Or even worse, they think they're complete. I say all that to say this. Your beauty must come from within before it can be seen from without. No matter how pretty you may be on the outside, if you're ugly on the inside, it will always show. As for the physical beauty alone, being well-rounded is key. The outside is a representation of what's on the inside. There should be no reason you have on a smoking hot outfit with your hair and nails done and have a pot belly. Chapter 2. Does talking to myself make me crazy? Okay, so you found a good look that you're intensely attracted to, and you have no problem walking down the street with them while you're on your A game. What's next? Let's talk. The only way to get that great personality that we value so much is by communication. It's amazing how valuable communication is on any level of a relationship. Now, with communication comes compatibility, which is why communication is so important. The physical first impression is only as impressive as the mental, especially being that we know our looks will fade. When we place value on compatibility, intelligibility becomes a factor. Conversation seems so innocent, but if you want to discuss the economy and your partner wants to discuss pop music, how will that echo years ahead? Sometimes a relationship doesn't have to be in turmoil in order to be incompatible. Communication is so valuable because it is the main precursor to the signs of your partner's true self. When a person speaks casually, they normally speak from their heart. If you listen long enough and close enough, you'll eventually learn everything you need to know about that person. Maybe not what you want to know, but what you need to know. You won't have to probe them or play immature mind games to discern the things you need to know to protect yourself or to acquaint yourself with your partner. Nowadays, everyone has something to say, but no one wants to listen. A good man knows how to listen, and a good woman knows when to shut up. Disagreements are natural, but they are totally different from fighting. Constant fighting means you don't really love yourself, or you love yourself too much to love someone else. You may have a lot in common with your partner, but not everything. You can't possibly and sensibly expect to agree on everything with your partner. It takes greater maturity to understand that and not be bitter about it. It's called disagreeing agreeably. When it comes to desires, they must be approached delicately. It's not what you say or do, it's how you do it. Make clear your wants and needs without down-talking your partner. Say what it is that you want and why you want it without mentioning how bad things are. Condescending speech can be taken as an offense to the partner's ego and automatically puts them on the defense, without the point ever getting across. The best way to do this is to choose the best time to approach your partner about the matter, depending on what the matter is. Then making sure that when that time is chosen, any kind of negative, antagonistic emotions are out of your system. This way, when you speak, you can be sincere and succinct with what your needs and desires are. Confusion and anger do not equal love or relationship. Love is not what you want or demand from the other. It is caring enough to give something before you feel the need to demand it. Talking. A man's actions are louder than his words, and a woman's words are louder than her actions. You must speak to the opposite sex in their language. Therefore, women must gauge a man's behavior and men must pay attention to a woman's words. Certain things may not be said directly, but there is something that they are trying to say. Honesty is the only policy. You don't have to give away your whole life story, but it is imperative to tell that partner what they need to know, the things that do or will eventually affect or pertain to them. A dysfunctional upbringing or childhood, a previous marriage, kids, a girlfriend or boyfriend on the side, an illness or surgery, or even past trauma. Anything that psychologically, financially, emotionally, or even physically affects your relationship, regardless of what level it is on. If a past failed relationship was your fault, admit that it was your fault. It takes more of a man or woman to be that honest up front, but understand how much hurt, heartache, and pain you could save yourself and your partner in the long run. There is a price for integrity, but a reward for honesty. Learn how to say what you really feel, not what you're upset about. People don't understand the language of anger. They may hear what you're saying, but they're not hearing you. And if all your partner hears is anger, eventually they're not going to want to hear it anymore. And they will not want to hear anything you have to say after that. It also takes a bigger man or woman to be able to express themselves, not only when they are angry or frustrated. But generally, if you're constantly angry or frustrated, then that should signify a problem within yourself that you must resolve personally apart from that new partner. If your issues go unresolved, you're more likely to take them out upon that partner, simply because they're closest to you. And instead of pulling them closer to you, you eventually push them away. Listening. This is actually more valuable than talking. We all have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I'm sure we've heard it before. Therefore, we should listen more than we talk. There is a big difference between listening at someone and listening to someone. Like I said previously, when communicating with your partner, if you listen close enough and long enough, you will find enough precursors about your partner. But you must be wise enough to discern and identify these precursors about your partner, and no one can do it for you. When listening to your partner, you must value them, value their opinions, and value their beliefs, and your partner should do the same. This way you can gather what they say, unbiased, and separate the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not only must you value your partner when listening, but you must put your partner's values before yours when listening. This is the only way you can make a clear judgment to decipher what is being said without being clouded by any kind of emotional angst due to a disagreement. The main reason most people don't listen in relationships is because they too often overvalue their own opinions. A person who overvalues their opinions is generally selfish and abusive. If they value their opinion over yours, imagine what else they will value over you. When listening, it is your duty to cultivate an environment where nothing is too big to be talked about, and that comes from maturity. Chapter 3. Sex will keep them around, but it won't keep them. Are you that naive to not know where you stand in a relationship? The fuck buddy, cuddy buddy, sex partner, concubine, mistress, fucking friend, etc. Neither of these monikers signifies any kind of substance, commitment, or meaning in a relationship. But does that mean it's wrong? The only thing that can be wrong with this situation is if one of the parties isn't cognizant of their stake in the relationship, or they simply do not want to be in this situation. This is another area where complete and honest communication is beneficial. The pursuit of mutual happiness at the expense of sheer pleasure is nothing but a thin line on shaky ground. A man determines where the relationship begins and ends. A woman determines how far the relationship will go. Men. As a man, it is terribly easy to be selfish and take a woman's weakness for kindness. I meant to say it in that order. You have to be upfront with her as to what you want. Don't be afraid of rejection. She is not the only woman on the planet. Women generally like to vilify a man for having a sex drive and being confident and assertive, which you should be. But one thing any man or woman can respect is honesty. And when you're honest, people will have no choice but to respect you. The disrespect comes in your delivery. Learn etiquette if need be. Learn the woman you're talking to. Communication, hello? Now fellas, I know this seems like a lot to ask from a woman you just want to have sex with, but the time you spend getting to know her and being honest with her will pay off exponential dividends in the long run, especially if you want to have sex with her again. Now don't be surprised if you dot your I's and cross your T's and still get rejected. No two women are the same, and not every woman is willing to take that chance with you or with any man for that matter. Don't get upset. If anything, you should appreciate that in her, because women like that ideally are likely to be wife material. Notice I said ideally and likely. I didn't mention gold diggers or those women who are just plain stuck up. However, imagine a world where every woman is a good girl gone bad. What a nightmare. Even though you would like to sleep with her, it is every decent man's wish to have at least one woman worthy enough to be put on a pedestal close enough to their beloved mother. Even though you would like to have a fuck buddy for as long as you can, you must admit to yourself that it isn't possible, simply because women aren't built that way. And eventually it will get old to you too. You may know what you want, but ask yourself what you need, because just as much as a woman can be a jump off to you, you can be a jump off to her. Women. Part of learning men is learning how to be a lady. There is a difference between a female, a woman, and a lady. A female is just a biological term which relegates a human being to an organ, their vagina. A woman is the female in absence of the concept of anything that represents manhood. A distinction of sorts. But a lady is everything a man wants to help him in life and not compete with him, simply because he faces enough competition outside his home. A woman is a picture of strength, all the things a girl tries to model herself after, i.e. all the things she sees in her mother or caregiver. Female is just by gender association or perception. A lady is a bit more of a delicate balance of all the things a woman would be. For instance, in the saying, a woman can do the things a man does and still be a lady, there is a lot of truth in that. The differences are defined by behavior. Most of the time you hear it described as, she's a strong woman. Or when something is all soft and pink, it's, she's such a lady. Understand that men and women perceive sex differently, and how you present yourself to that man will determine how he will treat you as long as he knows you. Am I saying build an emotional fortress so that no man will ever have a chance to take advantage of you? No, that's not what this book is about. But a good man will always recognize a lady. Notice I said a good man. But first you must know what a good man is, and also what a lady is, and how a lady presents herself to a good man. Being able to recognize a good man keeps you away from bad men and equips you to be capable of treating that good man. And being a lady attracts good men to you. And if that man is a good man, and you present yourself like a lady, that good man will never consider taking advantage of you. If a woman gives the right man her world, he will give her the world. Now, in understanding a woman's perception of sex, her selective process depends on who she will have sex with or not. A man's selective process is dependent upon which woman he will marry. This is because generally a man wouldn't mind sleeping with a majority of the women he meets. So it will take that special girl for him to want to marry her. Whereas women are constantly bombarded by sexual advances throughout their lives, by men. So the selection process would be a bit more narrowed to sex as opposed to marriage. Now, like I said previously, just because a man wants sex does not make him evil. You should appreciate the fact that he's honest enough to admit that he wants sex and not lead you on and toy with your emotions. You should also appreciate the fact that he finds you attractive enough to want to have sex with you. However, if you feel mutual and are willing to just be about sex and nothing else, be aware that you are subjecting yourself to that man's will as to which direction that relationship is going to go. Do not be surprised if that man never makes you his girlfriend or never makes you his wife. You have the right to be hurt, but you should not be surprised. Better yet, if you leave it up to that man, he would prefer to keep the relationship in that state for as long as possible. Whatever was in the beginning will be in the end. In other words, however your relationship began with that man is how it will end. If it is all about sex, that's all it ever will be. It takes a very detached woman to be comfortable with this fact. Waiting. Let's break this down so it can forever and consistently be broke. Whatever the reason may be for you to abstain from having sex, whether it be religious, spiritual, etc., let it be reasonable and feasible for you and the point that you are at in your life. In other words, don't vainly hold out simply because a preacher played on your guilt and told you to do so, or just because your last partner was a jerk and ruined the experience for you, or whatever the case may be. Let the life decisions you make be genuine and independent of any religious or social pressures. Let your decision be made out of conclusions based upon your own wisdom and solitude. With that being said, let's ask the billion-dollar question. How long should you wait to have sex? When hearing a question like this, the first thing you should ask yourself is, do you want to have sex? Of course, if the answer is no, then subsequently you already know the conclusion. But for all intents and purposes, let's assume you do want to have sex. Make an assessment of your partner. Do you want to have sex with that particular partner? How do you think you'll feel about them after you have sex with them? How do you think they'll feel afterwards? How do they feel now? How do you feel now? Will they still respect and honor you afterwards, regardless if you're their mate or not? Then, aside from the emotional standpoint, you must also assess how long your partner is accustomed to waiting for sex. A person who isn't used to waiting long isn't going to wait long for you to have sex with them. More than likely, they'll have someone on the side to quell their desires in the meantime. And if you have sex with someone like this early, believe it or not, they're not as likely to look down on you for sleeping with them so soon, simply because they're used to it. As opposed to someone who is used to waiting longer, they'll tend to be more skeptic. Oddly, the people who are used to having sex sooner may be more inclined to look down upon you for holding out, as it can be frustrating. The next question is, if you want to have sex with that particular partner, are you ready? You may not feel comfortable with them just yet. There may be some key factors or criteria that you may personally have in order to screen a sex partner. There is nothing inherently wrong with this in the grand scheme of things. Remember, you don't have to do anything with anyone, let alone have sex with someone. Just don't be too prude or stringent. Otherwise, you just may be that horny and tired of waiting yourself and have found someone decent enough. If you're already having sex with your partner, moderation is key. The more you see them, the less sex you should have with them. Being that the more time spent together is more time to get to know your partner, as opposed to a long-distance relationship. If you're long distance, then make the best of every opportunity you have to spend together. Long-distance relationships should only be temporary, though. We won't digress. In any case, be wise and careful, even if you're being hasty. Take the proper precautions to protect yourself and be responsible. Be mindful that you mustn't be a tease, but seduce. Don't give and take away. Just give a little from time to time. Teasing only causes frustration and pushes your partner away. Remember, sex starts in the mind. And the more you feed the imagination, the more desire you create, and the better the sex will be. Gauge your partner's threshold for patience and keep in mind that everyone is different. Therefore, you must be different with everyone. All in all, the art of waiting boils down to whether you want sex and are ready, and how long your partner is accustomed to waiting. Period. Chapter 4: The House of Representatives. Let's think about this. If you found yourself attracted to someone, and the conversation and quality time is great, but you noticed something quirky that you chose to conveniently ignore, being that, despite its peculiarity, it was too innocent and didn't seem that serious. You feel like you don't want to spoil the moment or ruin the newness, quote unquote, or novelty of the relationship. I call it the newness because of that early infatuation and excitement when you first meet someone. The newness of the relationship will last but so long, and not only is it short-lived, but it doesn't hold much weight either. When the newness fades, because it will, you will realize that there was a side your new partner displayed in the beginning, which can be slightly or extremely different from the behavior they will display later. That partner's behavior in the beginning is what is called the representative. The representative is the person who is well-mannered, well-spoken, well-groomed, well-dressed, well-off, anything that will impress you into believing that you have made the best choice you could possibly make in choosing a new partner. In a case of the early representative compared to that partner over time, the slight difference in behavior is simply politeness and courtesy, and maybe they've gotten a bit comfortable. An extreme difference in behavior is sheer deception. This is something to run far away from. When communicating with your new partner, do not be afraid to ask some very introspective questions, personal questions. Do not be afraid to answer some very introspective questions. You need that foundation established to sustain you when the newness passes. In other words, do not be afraid to let that partner go if need be. Why am I being this extreme? Because the main reason people get themselves stuck into toxic relationships is because of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing a relationship that could have been, fear of ruining their image, etc. There is nothing wrong with being alone, even though you may not want to be. If you can't stand being by yourself, why would you want to be with someone else? Who can stand you if you can't stand your own company? Have you ever been to the mall and seen a desperate shopper? They're always back the next day with the receipt in hand, trying to return the item they rushed to buy that day before. Desperation leads to dumb decisions which are seemingly always hard to get out of. Warren Buffett once said, "Success is getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you get." If you want to be happy, you would be willing to wait. You don't have time to be afraid, because fear is paralyzing. And when you're paralyzed, you're stuck wasting valuable time that you could be spending with the person who is meant for you. In most cases, the grass is greener on the other side. Fear can also keep people out of relationships. Being afraid can be a comfort zone for some people who have been hurt or betrayed in the past. Their fear enabled them to protect themselves from potential abusers or partners who would perpetually take advantage of them. Their fear keeps them in control, and control is comfortable. When you're in control, trust isn't necessary. When you're in control, your partner is no longer a partner, they are a possession. Where are you? Where are you going? Who are you with? Typical questions of one who is insecure or in fear of losing control over that person. In their perception, them losing control of their partner can bring upon that inevitable hurt or betrayal that they once felt before. This can perpetuate to abusiveness, which is discussed later. Understand that being overly protective or defensive cripples the emotional connection of the relationship because it makes the other partner feel as if they are dating a police officer. The constant pressure and interrogation is very uncomfortable, and it forces the partner's behavior to be premeditated and pretentious. They can never be themselves around you and give you their true selves because they're constantly worrying about how their behavior will affect you. Relationships are a two-way street in every aspect. When a relationship becomes one way, it is very easy to block the emotional flow. But on a two-way street, you can always work around things. It takes a lot of energy to try to control someone, and some just don't have that energy, and so they give up on relationships altogether. Which is why in most cases, you can notice people who are successful in every area of their lives except for their relationships. Because relationships are the one thing they cannot control. Relationships aren't about being comfortable. They're about trust. This is why people who have a hard time learning how to trust aren't good in relationships. Losing control of your partner means unbinding the mental chains of fear within yourself. Trust brings on freedom, the freedom to love. I said all that to say this. Understand that you're not going to like everything about that new partner, despite how perfect they may seem in the beginning. Don't be afraid to point things out or speak up on things you know definitely will cause problems in the future. And if the person did nice things in the beginning but stopped doing them as often, doesn't necessarily mean they've gotten comfortable. You couldn't possibly want them doing nice things on every opportunity on every day. You would eventually take those things for granted. Now, if they stop doing it altogether, then that might be a problem. What you've gotten is what you expected, and what you expect is what you're going to get. Also, be conscious of the fact that having sex with that partner can terribly cloud your judgment, especially if the sex is good. A lot of times, people who have sex too soon tend to base the relationship upon sex, and if the level of pleasure during sex declines, the fulfillment of the relationship tends to plummet along with it. Because, instead of taking the time to base the relationship upon each other's character, you've taken the easy route and base it upon what can be very fickle. Keep your eyes open, but don't be too nitpicky. Most importantly, educate yourself on signs of an abuser, and if you attract or are attracted to abusers also. But if you've gotten this far into this book, then any kind of extreme peculiarity about that new partner would be dealt with a long time ago. Chapter 5. Cheaters Never Prosper. Let's face it, cheating is a reality in dating. That doesn't excuse or justify the action. But in order to cope with reality, we must understand the psychology behind those actions. People cheat for many reasons, but men and women cheat for different reasons. Sometimes they cheat for the same. But whether you've cheated, are cheating, have been cheated on, or are being cheated on, we can all admit that it's never something to be proud of. Cheating is an act of betrayal on different levels, those of which being sexual and or emotional. However, the effect takes upon a spiritual turn. When a person gets cheated on, they have invested and entrusted a part of themselves into their partner, in which they were completely certain that partner would never waste, destroy, or devalue. Regardless of what that may be, whether sexual, emotional, or both, it is still of value, and when something is given away freely, it automatically loses its value. And the partner who has given something sentimental is now shamed, disappointed, and disrespected. The cheating partner doesn't always perceive themselves as cheating on their partner, at least not within the act. A majority of the time, cheating is committed in selfishness. The cheating partner is satisfying or fulfilling a void within themselves that they aren't or perceive they aren't getting from their partner. Whatever the case may be, no one partner can absolutely fulfill every need or desire. A partner is only designated to fulfilling the needs and desires of the relationship mutually with everything that God has given them. Understand that love has never stopped anyone from cheating. What keeps a partner from cheating is respect. It is hard to love someone you don't respect, but it's easy to respect someone you don't love. You can love someone and still cheat on them, but you can't respect someone and still cheat on them. However, you shouldn't be in a relationship unless you're in love, meaning both partners love each other. And being in love, there should be much respect present. This too needs to be communicated thoroughly. It is important to understand what can lead to cheating. It is very easy to be suspicious of your partner when there is nothing to be suspicious about. If you seek, you shall find, and what you expect to happen will eventually happen. Just because cheating is a reality does not mean it needs to be embraced or expected. Understand that what you perceive to be a threat will always exist. There will always be that potential other man or other woman lurking in the distance. Understand that you cannot control your partner. All you can do is love them with everything God has given you, and continually communicate and put forth the effort to develop friendship. Trust is a great commodity, but your trust ought to be put into God before it is in your partner, simply because your partner is human and not perfect. Therefore, they will inevitably hurt your feelings or break your heart in some way, shape, or form. In the end, there is really no excuse for cheating, but just because cheating is a reality doesn't mean monogamy is impossible for neither men nor women. It's also important that you communicate and constitute with your partner as to what the both of you actually consider cheating, being that it differs from person to person. Men. Men mainly cheat for sexual purposes. They seek a variety, if not a multitude of partners. Everyone knows men are visual creatures, and they like to conquer whatever they see. I, as a man, do not think of conquering when I set my eyes upon a woman I'm attracted to, but the act of courting her into sex or a relationship would be considered conquering in itself. Most men have large egos, or they may perceive themselves to be more than what they are. And for some men, having a girlfriend means having guaranteed sex, in a world where sex isn't guaranteed, for a man like it is for women. Remember, it is paramount for a partner to be complete within themselves to complete the relationship. So when an incomplete man is already in a relationship and spots a woman that he is attracted to, he may be inclined to pursue that woman. Our society teaches men that the more women they acquire, the more of a man they are. So most men pursue more women to feed their ego. For a man to be complete, as far as cheating is concerned, means to have the discipline, understanding, and respect enough for their partner to know that despite what your body wants to do or what you feel, the future you have with your present partner means more than that moment with another woman. Do understand that just because a man cheats doesn't mean he doesn't love the woman he's in a relationship with. A man can sleep with multiple women in the same night and still love his significant other just as much as he did the night before. It's simply because sex, for a man, is initially based upon physical pleasure. Generally, there is little to no emotional bond within the act itself, depending on the woman he is with. Yet, this still doesn't excuse cheating. If a man sees a moment with another woman more beneficial than a future with his partner, he should be man enough to let that partner go. Most of the time, men see letting their partner go or even divorce as too much of an inconvenience as opposed to just keeping it a secret. Women. In the same way men cheat to feed their egos, women do too, but in a different way. Women seek a variety of activity. Being as that women view sex differently, they have sex outside the relationship for different reasons. Women are known to be much more emotional and also to crave engagement of attention from the opposite sex. Some women have self-esteem issues, so the lack of attention from the opposite sex is no help. Sometimes women don't necessarily want attention from just one man, so they would seek attention from several, despite already being in a relationship. This is the same way a man would keep a girlfriend, but have other women on the side. A boyfriend guarantees affection and attention, while cheating offers the thrill they couldn't get or stopped getting in their relationship. Surprisingly, when a woman cheats, it can be more hurtful. Because when a woman cheats, most of the time, it's with a guy they actually like. Sex for women is more emotional than it is for men. For many women that do cheat, because their emotions are so involved, many times their feelings for their significant other may be deteriorated or beyond repair. This is another reason why it may hurt more. Chapter 6. Keep your hands and mouth to yourself. Sadly enough, abuse is very common amongst relationships, regardless of how rarely it's talked about. Abuse is also common in many different forms. The two main forms of abuse are physical abuse and what I like to call psychological abuse, meaning the verbal and nonverbal forms. Perception is reality. I will say this and say it again. The mind is powerful enough to fool itself. There are times when abusers do not think they're abusing, and the abused do not think they're being abused. It is important for all of us to question the norms in every aspect of our lives, as well as relationships, past, present, and future. You must understand that abuse comes from fear or anxiety or insecurity. The insecurity, fear, or anxiety comes from the abuser and is imposed upon the abused, despite any opposite appearance. An abuser's main goal is to stay in control or possession by way of manipulation of either the relationship or, in the most extreme cases, the partner, even if it means giving or birthing a baby. Being in control guarantees security and stability. Being in control ensures their place above their partner in order for that fear, insecurity, or anxiety not to rise again. Should this fear or anxiety arise, that is when the abuse occurs as a backlash. There are different triggers to insecurity, fear, or anxiety. Most of the triggers are casual actions which can make the abused partner suspect to cheating, or to commit an act or voicing an opinion which could be threatening to the abuser being quote-unquote on top or in control. In my opinion, the biggest trigger is for the abused to leave them or hint at leaving them. The second biggest would be the abuser being exposed in public. Another peculiar trigger is for the abused partner to simply have some type of ascension or happiness within their lives, for example, a career or educational advancement, or a joyous or sentimental moment amongst family or friends. An abused partner's ascension is a direct threat to the abuser's perceived position in the relationship. When they feel as though they are no longer quote-unquote on top or being depended upon, then they are no longer in control, even if it means doing whatever they can to keep that partner from being happy. The abused partner leaving is generally a byproduct of the abuser's controlling or possessive behavior. In lieu of leaving, the abuser likes to play an acting game, whereas they then act apologetic of their behavior. If that abused partner is receptive, then they revert to the previous abuse, being that there is no incentive to change. If the abused isn't receptive, then the abuser advances to more impactful measures like guilt trips and fits of rage. But the proper question to ask is why an abuser is controlling or possessive. A legend in your own mind. One of my personal theories on abusive behavior in relationships is the legend in your own mind theory. What constitutes an abuser in being a legend in their own mind is when a partner's values, morals, and perceptions of themselves and their partner is so distorted to the point where they violate their partner physically or verbally and think nothing of it, or think that it isn't a big deal. The biggest driver of this behavior, or better yet, mentality, is pride. For a legend to be remorseful or apologetic after an abusive act would be for them to give control to the abused or step down from their quote-unquote throne. They will dumb down their partner's feelings, opinions, or values. Once they've denied any apology to their partner long enough, they develop a growing complacency, in which the behavior perpetuates into worse and more blatant behavior, simply because the abused allows it. Sort of like being in a relationship with an after-school bully. For an abuser to be unapologetic to their partner, they must rationalize within their minds that nothing they do is wrong, or if it is wrong, they have good reason for doing it, mainly because their partner supposedly provoked them to do so. The blame game is their most deadly weapon. An abuser is also very skilled at convincing the abused that their emotions and opinions are less important than theirs, and they will concoct the cleverest excuse to justify the abusive behavior. Other times, abusers will also accuse their partners for abuse when they may be retaliating or defending themselves or points of view. Many times, an abuser will blame their partner for the things in their life that don't necessarily have anything to do with their partner. The legend in your own mind theory is a constant struggle for supremacy driven by selfish pride and insecurity, designed to avoid accountability or fault for wrong at all cost, but to unjustly take every credit for good. An abuser is in constant competition and is never satisfied, simply because they are not complete within themselves. Like I've said before, being incomplete personally is terribly defeating to the purpose of being in a relationship in order to complete it. It's called self-esteem for a reason. No matter how asinine it is, it always seems like the people who shouldn't be in relationships are always the ones getting into them. In my own opinion, the number one reason is self-esteem. There are various reasons to the inadequacy of self-esteem, some being mistreatment or teasing at a young age, a dysfunctional home background, a traumatic experience, or a series of disdainful experiences. But when a low self-esteem exists within an abuser, there is a shortcoming or void that needs to be filled. Ignorant of the power within themselves, abusers and the abused believe they must fulfill their void by acquiring a mate. Abusers and the abused feel that having a mate means someone can give them the love they never had, or better yet, the attention. Many times an abuser manipulates their partner like a trophy. Trophies are put on displays in public and are tossed onto a shelf at home and forgotten about, neglected, or mistreated. Because of the abusers and the abused low self-esteem, it is a must for them to maintain a proper public image at the partner's expense, smiling and acting as if nothing ever happened at home. Because of an abuser's psychological need for a mate, their biggest fear is for that abused partner to leave them. On the outside looking in, it seems illogical. If you treat someone terribly, you must not want to be with them. Think about it. Just because a trophy is on the shelf does not mean it's garbage. Remember, a trophy is still a symbol of accomplishment or an extension of something that the owner is not. Trophies shine and pose all the time, but yet a trophy is still a possession, and no one is meant to be possessed. When a partner becomes a possession, it is almost inevitable for some kind of surveillance and abuse to take place. The constant checking up on you, quote unquote, as I discussed previously. Despite a trophy's possession and neglect, it is still of worth and value, and the reason an abuser, a majority of the time, insists upon manipulating their partner not to leave is simply because them leaving is a direct blow to their self-esteem. It is a loss or a statement of rejection. The reason people abuse their partners or see them as trophies is because they don't know theirs or their partner's purpose. When you abuse something, you use it in the wrong way. You abuse it. Mirror, mirror. Abusers confuse their partners because of their moodiness and callousness, treating their partners differently in one place than another, or just not treating them at all, to turn around and say they love them. It is impossible for someone to show any kind of love, affection, attention, intimacy, sympathy, or empathy that they've never seen or been given. They can only give what has been given to them or nothing at all, and many times that means taking it out on the abused partner. Much of abuse thrives upon victimization and reverse victimization, whereas the abused perceives themselves as a victim and accepts the abuse, or the abuser feels that their problems in life are their partner's fault, or that their partner provokes them to act the way that they do. This victim mentality works differently on the abuser and the abused, because the abused thinks everything is their fault and the abuser thinks nothing is their fault. But what they both have in common is that they want everyone on the outside to feel sorry for them, and neither of them can ever get help this way. They both believe that as long as they stay victims, they can continue to stay in their present condition, where they might still believe they're in love. In my opinion, there is a thin line between love and addiction. Love heals, and addiction hurts. The question that should be asked is, what would make either partner think they are in love? We must question what we call normal. Everyone's normal is different in different aspects. My personal belief is that it starts in the home. Children never ask to be brought into the kind of households they may be in. Many abused partners and their abusers come from dysfunctional homes. In the home, we are shown examples of how things are supposed to be, how a man conducts himself, how a woman conducts herself, how they interact with each other, and how we interact with the opposite sex. If these examples are missing or are blurred for any reason, how does this carry on into that child's adult behavior? I made it my business for the reader to somewhat get an understanding of what an abuser is, but also just as important, not only to be able to identify an abuser, but to recognize the psychological signs of abuse before it is obviously allowed. An abuser may have low self-esteem, but the abused may also have low self-esteem or have had their self-esteem shot down by that abuser or by someone in the past, which may be the reason they are with them in the first place. Like attracts like, which is why it is also important for an abused partner to understand what is in them or what it is that they are missing within them that is attracted to or attracts themselves to abusive people. It is not impossible for an abuser to change, nor is it impossible for the abused to find healing. But the change and the healing begin in the mind, the same way the abuse started. Sometimes, abuse isn't always as noticeable at first glance. However, there is no relationship on any level that you have to be in, nor do you have the right to abuse anyone in any way, shape, or form. Educate yourself on the signs, but most importantly, educate yourself on God and yourself. Find out what you're worth. Find out your purpose. Then there would be no need for this chapter. Chapter 7. The One in the Matrix. How do you know your partner is the one? Well, the first question you should ask is, do you love the person? Do you know what love is and what it is not? You should never want to be in a serious relationship with someone you don't love. Why, you ask? You're practically wasting your time. It's one thing to have fun and occupy your leisure time with a significant other, but it is our nature to seek love, and if you're occupied by someone you don't love, how will you welcome someone you actually love? We may not know when or how love may come or even go, but we must be ready for it. The next question you must ask is, do you like the person? A lot of people are in unhealthy relationships because they love their partner, but they do not like them. Some may argue that there is a difference between loving someone and being in love with them. In my opinion, what is implied by this statement is that you can love a lot of people, but being in love with someone is when your life is completely engaged into your partner and vice versa. Therefore, when in a relationship, your goal is to have your life engaged into your partner's life if you love them. So where does liking them come in? Well, think about this. Don't you have family members that you aren't too fond of? And if they weren't kin to you, you would rather not have anything to do with them? And the only reason you love them is because they're family? Now, if this is the case with family, which is involuntary, then why would you voluntarily put yourself in such a predicament in a relationship? Liking your partner comes from developing a friendship. Friendship is the foundation in which love rests upon. Friendship is what keeps that partner in love with you when the newness or novelty is gone. The only drawback to friendship, as opposed to love, is that it can fade. However, it is reparable, unlike the newness in the beginning of the relationship. Once again, building a friendship comes from communication. But another virtue that builds friendship is patience. The main reason people become lovers before they become friends is because of impatience. They rush into things. New couples easily get blinded by the newness, and developing a bond with their partner, not just getting to know them, doesn't become much of a priority in the beginning. Speaking of family, a person's upbringing absolutely cannot be ignored. When seeking a life partner, it is important for both of your life patterns to be parallel and not intersecting or clashing. This means that if you grew up in a single-parent home and your partner had a mom and a dad at home, or if your partner grew up in a low-income ghetto and you grew up in a high-income suburb, your life patterns and mentalities would normally be set in different directions. Opposites may attract, but opposites are opposites for a reason. We are products of our environments, whether we like it or not, which is beyond our control. However, we can control our atmosphere and who we allow into it. Our past is the foundation for our future. You may have overcome stigmas and stereotypes in many ways, but your upbringing still lays some of the groundwork for your personality and character, whether good or bad. This goes the same for your partner or potential partner. When in a relationship, in the beginning, people tend to not pay attention to theirs or their partner's past because it is just that, their past. So it may seem even more innocent than the representative. The thing about a person's upbringing is that it is sort of like the reverse of the representative. The representative shows up in the beginning, however the upbringing shows up later and into the end of the relationship. All in all, knowing the one comes from reading the signs, and when you see the signs, admit what they are. The mind is so powerful that it can fool itself. Know how to read a representative, how to read an upbringing, and cultivate a friendship. Then you won't perpetuate opportunities to fool yourself. It is also important to be honest with yourself as to your own representative, your own upbringing, and your own means of cultivating a friendship. The thing about friendships is that they are constantly growing and developing while the love is always there. Ask any healthy couple who has been together for several decades, and they will normally tell you that they and their partner are best friends. And they will also tell you that they are constantly learning something new from their partner. Why? Because they're willing to seek out new things in their partner. Once you quit trying to learn your partner, you become bored. And once you're bored, you will take that partner for granted. This is where the friendship will fall apart, and so will the relationship. But you can still love that person. A major question that should be asked is, what are your intentions for the relationship or the future in general? People have expectations. Men's expectations are different from women's expectations, but they still have expectations. Some women are raised to think that a man is supposed to take care of them. Some men are raised to think that they are supposed to take care of a woman. Neither of these ideals is bad, but our ideals need to constantly be evaluated. We are all given ideals by our upbringing, environment, media, etc. But our ideals, no matter how innocent they may seem, may have come into conflict with the ideals of our partner or a present circumstance. Therefore, these ideals need to be either compromised or eliminated altogether. What if there was a relationship where the woman had the mindset that her mate should take care of her? But what if the man believed that his mate should take care of him? What would this relationship be like? How would it work? Now picture a relationship where both partners believe that they should take care of each other. That relationship would do nothing but grow and be fruitful, simply because both partners are constantly pouring each other's commodities into each other, being time, energy, and money. In most failed relationships, there is always one culprit, even though there seems to be a mutual stalemate. Mutuality is paramount for compatibility, whether it is failed or successful. No relationship stays the same. It either gets better or worse. A couple's perspectives must be parallel and sound, and must be communicated consistently and vocally. Chapter 8. For richer or poorer. Friendships need to be cultivated. The convenience to it is that friendships can be cultivated under any circumstances. No matter how far away, how much time, or how much money separates you, you can always acknowledge someone as your friend. Dating doesn't always work that way. There are three fundamental commodities in life which are just as vital to dating: time, energy, and money. The reason friendship is so convenient, yet so powerful, is because it transcends these commodities, or the lack thereof. But relationships must be facilitated by these commodities in the same way a friendship is facilitated by communication. When dealing with time, energy, and money, reciprocity is the name of the game. Time. Time is arguably the most important commodity because it is the one commodity you can't get back. Some people lead busy lives due to many things like family and occupation. However, no one is always busy. There are circumstances where you must question, do I have time to facilitate a relationship at this point in my life? You or your partner must have an understanding that everything in life, as well as relationships, is a process, not an event. People value time in terms of what they can give in order to get, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Others tend to vilify this attribute as a sign of greed, despite the fact that the world is built upon such an attitude of giving and getting. When you go to work, you are trading your time for money. When you get into a relationship, you're trading your time for happiness. At least you should be. Now, if your time is in the marketplace of a relationship, it is competing with other markets, like your occupation. If you want to make the most out of your relationship, you must manage your time wisely in order to get the most profit or return. That means making judgments between your relationships and your occupation and other activities or obligations, judging between which of these is more beneficial to the other. Your occupation pays money to facilitate your relationship, but does it take away the time for the relationship that you are in or want to be in? You may love to spend time with your partner, but is the excess amount of time you spend with your partner distracting or detracting you from your occupation? Are your exterior activities a distraction all by themselves? Energy. We tend to underestimate our energy, but our energy tends to be something we don't miss until it is gone. When I speak of energy, I don't speak of the energy you use to go to the gym or anything of that nature. I'm speaking of the energy which can be synonymous with charisma or enthusiasm in a maximum perspective, and in some cases, tolerance or patience in a minimum perspective. Energy must be put into a relationship in order to facilitate it. You will put energy into anything you commit yourself to. The question is how you give that energy and how you receive it. Not to get spiritual, but the kind of energy that I speak of qualifies as either negative or positive. How often do you have nice things to say to your partner? How often does your partner have nice things to say to you? How often do you do nice things for your partner? How often does your partner do nice things for you? Energy is transferred through words and actions. However much energy you receive in a relationship is how much energy you should put back into it. However much energy you give is how much energy you should get back. It's basically a two-way street. When this two-way street gets blocked or becomes a one-way street, that's when the relationship dies out. If one partner is constantly giving energy and the other is constantly taking with no reciprocity, eventually there will be nothing left to give. That giving partner will run out of energy or their tolerance and patience, and that receiving partner will run out of charisma and enthusiasm. A relationship is like a well. If you put water in it, you can take water out, drink, and survive. Money. Opposite to time, money tends to be the most overvalued commodity of the three, despite the fact that it does play a big part, if that makes sense. Money is simply a byproduct of time and energy. It is an extension of status and a tool of power. This is a thorough translation into gender roles in the relationship, because as far as manhood is concerned, status and power mean everything. It is a man's nature to have at least one or the other. Now, how practical is this? Being that in this day and age, women are climbing the socioeconomic ladder of status and power every day. But economics does not change demographics. No matter how much money is acquired, a man is still a man, and it is imperative that he, despite the number in his bank account, is still the head of his household. There must be order of some sort in the household. Remember, money is a byproduct of time and energy, and it is only an extension of status and power. However, it is nowhere near a designation of manhood. A woman may be able to financially provide, but she is not built to protect. A woman can only do what she is designed to do, and vice versa. Many people say a relationship is 50-50, but it is not 50-50 all the time. Spiritually, a man and a woman are equals. Physically, they are not. Understand that there are times when a woman must sit back and allow a man to be a man, and a man must sit back and allow a woman to be a woman. It is wise to choose a mate who is financially comparable to you, but the wisest choice is to choose a mate who is financially self-sufficient, not independent. Being independent means being alone, which no one wants to be. Being independent means acquiring funds and resources for yourself and investing your commodities of time, energy, and money to generate returns for yourself. Simply taking a stand as someone who is immersed in their own benefit and welfare as a reaction and not a proaction to their fear or distrust of acquiring a partner. As a matter of fact, anyone who is dating and calls themselves independent is someone to run far away from. Why would you want to be engaged in a mutual relationship if you are self-proclaimed independent? Being self-sufficient means being able to take care of yourself in the absence of a partner. The reason a relationship with this type of partner is the most sensible is because a dependent partner is a partner that will depend upon whoever they're in a relationship with. Now, this pertains to either time, energy, or money, but tends to be most prevalent dealing with finances. Money is a byproduct of your time and energy, but it is still a commodity. And if you remember, it can still be exchanged for either time, energy, or money as well. Even if a partner may not mind supporting a dependent partner, the dependency may take its toll, and if the only thing being exchanged is money, there will be an imbalance, and eventually that supportive partner will run out of time and energy, or even money, simply because they're not getting anything in return equally. A self-sufficient partner brings no burden. A self-sufficient partner can be emotionally candid without any fear of financial support being stopped. There is no deceptive behavior to perpetuate their dependency. A self-sufficient partner concerns themselves the least with money, simply because they know whether with or without each other, they can take care of themselves, which is why money is the most overvalued commodity, and that is independence like no other. Managing money begins with managing your heart. Because money is so valued in relationships is why it can be so threatening. Once again, this is where communication comes in. When a partner is being deceptive with finances, it brings upon distrust on a whole other level. It shows that that partner values their well-being and livelihood over that of the relationship. And if they're capable of being deceptive with that, what else are they capable of being deceptive of? Managing finances is a direct display of character, being that your money affects every aspect of your life. Chapter 9. In God We Trust. People tend to conveniently undermine and ignore the significance of God in a relationship, or better yet, their relationship. Acknowledging God in your own life is a commitment all on its own, let alone to acknowledge Him in a relationship. One thing that must be understood is that in order to maintain a long and healthy relationship with your partner, you must maintain a healthy relationship with God. Why? First, understand that there is a difference between a relationship and a religion. That's another topic all by itself. But understand that God is inside of you, and pleasing Him means pleasing the innermost part of you, the part of you that is most honest, most generous, genuine, and most of all, the most loving part of you. The Bible says God is love. Acknowledging God allows you to be self-conscious on a higher level, and being able to separate lies from truth, physical from spiritual, and sex from love. Knowing God means knowing love, and if you know God, then you know what love is not. Knowing God completes you with or without a partner. and allows you to properly and maturely complete your relationship. When you do all the things I've explained in this book, you've prepared yourself to court your partner. After you've met them, you've fully communicated with them and gotten to know them well enough to know what the both of you want from each other, and substantially exchange the time, energy, and money together. What are you really doing? You're basically seeking the innermost part of that partner. You're seeking God, or the God in that partner. You're trying to find that higher level in your partner that you can trust and rest your faith upon. You're trying to separate the way things are from what you want them to be. You're trying to find yourself in that partner. When you know God and are complete within yourself, regardless of your exterior circumstances, the things you want in life come to you. Looking for a partner or forcing things on only brings upon the relationships you want, but not the ones you need. You may know what you want, but God knows what you need. And we all know that what we want isn't always good for us. Fairy tales or fantasies are chased by lies, but dreams come from truth, by God. Step 1. Trauma. Phase 1. Realization. This shit is fucked up. I title this phase as strongly as I did because it needs to be. Many times in relationships that have gone bad, a lot of lying occurs. Lying to each other, as well as to themselves. Now I know what you're thinking, but this lying doesn't always involve cheating. The cheating is simply a byproduct of the lying. It's surface. The lying is about how each other truly feels about each other. At first, they lie to their partner about how they truly feel about each other. Then to maintain that, they have to psych themselves into believing that lie to be true in order to convince their partner. In turn, they eventually lie to themselves. The most dangerous point is when a person begins to lie to themselves in which they are delirious and are capable of lying to anyone about anything, simply because in their minds, the truth and lie all run together. They've worked it up in their minds to be so. The thing about lying to yourself, or lying period, is that your words never match your behavior. This is because your heart and mind are in conflict with one another. For example, you know that person is abusing you or taking advantage of you. You know you allow it, but you don't know why as of yet. So you tell yourself and others excuses to pacify their behavior that you have yet found the source or explanation of. Why would a person say they're happy in a relationship if they're constantly arguing and the arguments are getting worse each time? Why does a couple act viciously towards each other behind closed doors but so sweet in public? Why would you dog your partner and complain to your friends and family about your partner, but when your partner comes around, you're defending them as if they can do no wrong? It's this kind of confusion that deteriorates the soul and leaves a person regretful and bitter when eventually departing such horrible relationships. So what would bring a couple to lying to each other as well as themselves, you ask? Most of the time it's noble, for the sake of peace and sanity. No one really wants to invite the drama and dissonance that can be caused by disenchantment in a relationship. It is easier to just lie and tell the person you love them or are still in love with them when you're not. There is a comparative advantage to saying that you're happy and you want to be in the relationship, when in all actuality, you want to date other people and you feel stuck. However, once these lies are maintained and established, there is always a backlash with time. This is where the first phase begins. The truth will always speak for itself. And when the truth or reality stares you in the eye, there is no opportunity to blink or turn away. You must deal with it head on, because if you go around it, it will follow you. The greatest backlash is the foreseen hurt in which both parties tried to avoid. What hurts more is asking yourself and your partner what to do now that the truth has set in. The truth must be exposed early and sternly out of love. Not romantic love, but love for yourself and your fellow human being's condition. If you allow bullshit to slide, understand that it will eventually slide on you. Whether the lying was emotional, concerning the state of the relationship, or factual, concerning adultery or something logistical, it is still pivotal. Whether it was an incident or a habitual series of events, trust has been destroyed. And many times lying to oneself is subsequent to rebuilding this trust. However, lying to yourself is actually retarding the process of trusting your partner again. People change, however, they do not change overnight. The truth is, your partner may never fall back in love with you. They may have never been in love with you. And they may never stop lying to you or living that lie with you. Lying is the most exhausting thing someone can do spiritually. Therefore, the truth has no choice but to present itself when the person lying gets exhausted. If someone lies to you in a relationship, understand that it isn't you they are lying to. They are lying to what you represent to them. Therefore, your initial reaction may be to take it personal. However, that isn't necessary. If you are lying to yourself about the state of the relationship, ask yourself, is what you choose to call the relationship for the sake of keeping it together really worth your eternal joy? You don't know what pain is until you felt happiness. Therefore, if you have to lie to yourself to be happy, how long have you really been in pain? Step 1, trauma. Phase 2, immobilization. I want to leave, but I'm not ready. Once the truth sets in, it's decision time. Your partner doesn't always have to tell you the truth. You have the capacity to realize it for yourself. Some people are more decisive than others, but it can be said that some people make decisions out of haste and poor judgment, or even out of defensive or coping mechanisms. Everyone knows the truth hurts, so the question is, how do you handle that pain? When someone hurts you, or you realize something hurtful about your relationship, you have a choice to either fight or flight. You can fight through the hurt and the mistrust, and you and your partner can make a collaborative effort to rebuild the relationship based on what you want in the future, not based on what you had in the past. Or you can leave the relationship because the only way you know how to handle something hurting you is by getting away from them. Or you're actually leaving because you value your spiritual welfare and you acknowledge the fact that to continue being in a relationship with this person would be detrimental. Either way, a decision must be made. The question is, if you have made up your mind to leave, or have already made efforts to physically leave the relationship and distance yourself from your soon-to-be ex-partner, are you ready to leave? Many people are so caught up in leaving that they never ask themselves this question simply because they're caught up in the thought of leaving and everything that comes with that. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't insinuate staying in an unhealthy relationship. But what needs to be accounted for when contemplating departing an unhealthy relationship is, despite the angst you currently feel towards this person, are you ready to go another day without contacting them, or contacting them consistently and not miss them? Are you going to reminisce on the good times and the favors and contributions they provided for you? How often do people leave relationships in the height of their anger and find themselves coming right back to what they know to be comfortable at the particular time? This tends to be the phase where a lot of people tend to leave and come back. I like to name this the twilight zone phase of the relationship because of how deceiving it is to oneself. You think you're ready when you're actually not. Don't you hate that? Yes, it's true. Leaving the relationship can be scary. You don't know what's on the other side. You may have low self-esteem at that time and think that no one else will be attracted to you or want to date you. You may think no one else may be good enough for you. You may think you won't find a better partner. You may not know where you will live or how you will make a living. These considerations, despite how realistic they may seem, can be more persuasive towards staying in an unhealthy relationship as opposed to leaving. However, when assessing your readiness, you must not only ask questions, you must also give yourself answers to the questions you ask yourself. 1. Ask yourself, is staying in this unhealthy relationship worth compromising your spiritual welfare? 2. Where and what is my beauty? What about me is attractive? 3. What is in my power to make more attractive? 4. Who told me I was unattractive or undesirable in the first place, and why did they say it? 5. Is it true? 6. If it's not true, what made me accept it to be true? 7. Do I want to be what anyone else calls me? 8. If I don't, then why haven't I called myself the opposite of what anyone else calls me that I don't want to be? 9. Are the things that I'm being accused of truly my fault? 10. What made me believe it if it isn't? 11. Who's to say I can't survive on my own? What if I do survive on my own? 12. The answers are all in you. These are the type of questions you need to ask yourself. It all starts and ends with you. In all actuality, the relationship started and ended with you. Everything you have experienced and or are experiencing is a result of the decisions you made from the beginning, as well as what you've allowed. But think, if you had the power to start it, don't you have the power to stop it? This isn't an opportunity to hang your head and beat up on yourself for being in an unhealthy relationship that you thought you were ready to get out of. This is an opportunity to hold your head high and find yourself and who you are. An opportunity to get ready to leave, whereas you weren't before. Phase 3, readiness. I can't take this shit anymore. The time has come, and you're now ready to see if the grass is truly greener. This is not a gamble, nor a decision at this point. It is fate. You are at the point of no return. This is a phase of good anger, quote unquote. You're simply fed up with the circumstances. You've developed a concise exit plan in your mind, and you're completely willing to take all the necessary steps to remove yourself from your soon-to-be ex-partner by any means necessary. This is called good anger because your frustration is motivating you toward positive, constructive behavior that will eventually contribute to you leaving a relationship that is negative and destructive. Now, you are answering all the questions you asked yourself in phase 2. But furthermore, the question you should ask yourself is, now that I'm ready to get out, how do I not go back or end up in a similar predicament? The fact that you are emotionally or psychologically ready to leave doesn't necessarily mean you are logistically ready to leave. Therefore, there is time in between you being ready to leave and you actually leaving that must be managed very carefully. Understand that you are now sleeping with the enemy. You may already be at odds with your now estranged partner. You may be in an abusive or confrontational relationship, and you don't want any escalation of conflict due to any disclosing news of you contemplating leaving the relationship. If you can leave on good terms, make every effort to do so. If you have to leave abruptly, then do so, but don't do it out of spite to see your partner's reaction when they arrive to a bare home. You wanting out of the relationship doesn't mean that you are out of it either. Most people have the tendency to carry out affairs at this point, being as that they feel the damages are done and there is nothing left to lose. So why not date other people, being that you want to anyway? Not to mention the thrill and temptation of revenge, or simply a way of aggravating your partner. Everyone knows this brings up more drama, but while you're reading this, you have the opportunity to take a moment and ask yourself another question. Despite the fact that you're ready to leave and you want to date other people, is prematurely carrying out a relationship worth the drama? Face it, you are cheating. And if you are cheating with this person, when you actually leave your current partner, what makes you think that you won't cheat on this new partner, or that they may cheat on you? This is a trying time because you're still dealing with your partner, because you're in a relationship with them currently. But because you are ready to leave, your attitude towards that partner may become sour. Keep the end in mind. You're preparing to get out of this relationship, so it is important to keep your heart pure and your conscience clear. You want a positive outlook and perspective on a potential partner, as well as an open mind and open heart. You may find yourself being defensive or withdrawn against your current partner in order to maintain your peace or sanity. But you must relinquish this stance when transitioning out of the relationship. Your intent towards a clear conscience accompanied with personal re-education on self and relationships is the key to not repeating the mistake you made in the first relationship. Once you repeat this, it's no longer a mistake, it's a decision. Step 2. Recovery. So I devised a theory from various sources which states, quote, once you have broken up, the amount of time it takes for you to undergo the process of breaking up is half the time of the relationship as a whole, unquote. This is why I claimed cheating as a byproduct earlier. However, the theory continues by stating, quote, the same amount of time it takes for you to break up is the amount of time it takes for you to get over the person, unquote. Remember, this is just a theory, but I do believe it is very valid. We all know, or at least we should know, that it takes time to get over someone. You took enough to ingrain your life into a relationship with that person. So what would make you think that with all the time, energy, and money invested, that you would instantly get over them? Which is why I mentioned the importance of being honest with yourself previously. The solution is not only being honest with yourself as far as getting over the person is concerned, but you must also understand the steps necessary to get over the person. Like we discussed before, it is possible to think that you're ready to leave the relationship, then leave and end up coming right back. So now we will discuss how it is we may know that we are ready to actually leave the relationship, as well as how we may know that we are over the person. Let's keep into account those who have been abandoned in a relationship, whereas that partner has deserted the relationship abruptly. Abandonment can leave deep scars, but just like all scars, they do heal. Your heart may have very well been in the relationship, or maybe it wasn't, but know that the person left for a reason. Depending on the situation, it may or may not have been your fault, but whatever the reason is, you must be honest with yourself about it. Understand that that person may have left, but they didn't leave you. They were just going after what it is that they truly wanted, whatever it may be. Abandonment is a form of rejection, but rejection is a part of life. We are all creatures of desire. It is through desire in which we are created, and it is in desire in which we seek things. Therefore, rejection is necessary in life's equation for a balance to be achieved. We all commit rejection at some point in our lives, so if we can dish it, we must be able to take it. Rejection puts things in a better place than it was in before. Sort of like fitting a proper piece in a puzzle. Rejection is opportunity for you to get what you want out of life, a chance to fit the proper piece into the puzzle. So know what it is that you want and take advantage of it. Phase 1. Emotional disconnect. Normally this phase occurs while still in the relationship, depending on the circumstance. Of course, if you've been abandoned, this phase would occur after the relationship, or at least it should. Also, emotional disconnect can occur quickly depending on the situation. Men tend to disconnect emotionally a lot quicker than women do. Emotional disconnect generally comes after the realization phase of phase 1, but mainly after the readiness of phase 3. If you are stuck in step 1 to phase 2, immobilization, and aren't ready to leave, then apparently you haven't disconnected emotionally. Disconnect mainly comes from the hurt of the realization and evolves into readiness to leave. Disconnect is detected in several ways. For instance, dialogue between partners becomes basic and only out of necessity, instead of conversational and casual. The sex decreases in frequency due to lack of desire for that person, and when it does occur, it's very unparticipative or lacks enthusiasm. The body language is very withdrawn, with minimal eye contact in most instances. Let's not forget to mention constant arguing and fighting, which escalates in severity and frequency. Not only does the arguing and fighting increase, but it becomes more petty. A couple can easily get lost in a dispute at this point because they feel working the relationship out is no longer feasible. So the only sensible thing to do is defend yourself or attack. The biggest sign of disconnect is silence. Silence is painful because so much is being said without saying anything at all. Being silent is a form of withdrawal. It's like a subconscious stance you take against your partner by saying, Quote, I'm beyond the point of not wanting you to hurt me anymore. I'm at the point of you not being able to hurt me anymore, simply because I don't care enough to be hurt. I've been hurt so much to the point I am numb to your character and anything you do towards me. So there is no point in getting upset, perturbed, discussing, or even uttering about it. It's simply not worth it because you're not worth it, unquote. Silence can be unsettling because that other partner can easily notice the withdrawal. The fact that they notice the withdrawal can urge them to instigate you all the more to get a reaction out of you. Silence makes sense as a defense mechanism while in the relationship, but it mustn't become habitual because it isn't healthy towards getting out of the relationship. To healthily disconnect yourself from the relationship, it is important to recognize what it is your partner does or says that triggers your hurt, disconnect, and withdrawal. Understand that that person isn't trying to hurt you, they are just being themselves. Emotional disconnect is a different ballgame when out of the relationship, though. Feelings of jealousy may arise at this point simply because you haven't been in contact with that person, and the one time you do contact that person, you come to find out someone else is in their picture when you were so accustomed to being there. Don't be surprised with yourself. This is completely natural. When you are emotionally disconnected out of the relationship, you are no longer affected by what that partner says or does emotionally, without having to withdraw any defense mechanisms. You are physically apart from them. Your interaction with them is minimized or ceased. So now your emotional attention is more freed to focus upon yourself. This is the opportunity to find out what you like and dislike without any manipulation, persuasion, or influence. This is the opportunity to find happiness. Many times people think they're happy until they find out what happiness is. It is very easy to mesh emotional disconnect with psychological disconnect, which will be discussed next. It's confusing because the emotional disconnect, in all actuality, is derived from your psychology. For example, you get hurt because you perceive a circumstance as offensive in your psychology. So it would make sense for the two phases to blend, but let's discuss the difference. Phase 2, psychological disconnect. Your emotions are guided by your psychology, but your behavior is also. This is what we will focus on more concerning psychological disconnect. The thing that is so monstrous about psychological disconnect is the fact that it's so hard to detect. It's so hard to detect that most times it would take other people to detect whether you've disconnected or not for you. The reason being is that emotional disconnect is more of a conscious experience, while the psychological is more of a subconscious experience. When I say subconscious, I mean that you are carrying out behavior that is triggered by memories and habits developed in the previous relationship that you are completely not aware of. Psychological disconnect only begins once you've gotten out of the relationship, after the readiness, step 1, phase 3. The question is, when does it end? This is where I resort to my half theory. Assuming that it may take half the time of the relationship to get over the person psychologically. But truthfully, no one can tell how long it takes to psychologically get over someone. It depends on the person and their psychological makeup. Despite questioning when the psychological disconnect ends, we must also question how to detect when you have gotten over someone psychologically. Coming out of the relationship, memories and habits are still fresh, and they have a tendency to recall themselves at the most inopportune moments. Your subconscious or unaware mind brings back memories or habits which are triggered by conversations, incidents, or moments of solitude. You ever wake up in the morning mimicking situations from your past, replaying them in your mind? Are you ever in conversation and find yourself running off on a tangent about that ex-partner? Do you keep or hoard items as souvenirs from that past relationship? Do you unjustly treat people callously who remind you of your ex? Or do you react snappily to particular statements that relate to that past relationship, even if not stated directly or relatively? You might be more aware of memories, but the habits can go completely undetected. This is because you have been conditioned to the mannerisms and peculiarities of that previous partner. Understand that memories don't go away. Neither do suppressed nor traumatic memories, but bad habits can only be replaced by good ones. The best way to psychologically disconnect from a past relationship is to spend time by yourself. This can also be the hardest thing to do, especially if you were in the previous relationship for a long time. Remember, I mentioned that those memories or habits tend to surface in moments of solitude. Being alone may be your weakest moments, but this is also your biggest advantage to detect and get over those memories and habits. Rebounding right into another relationship immediately after another creates confusion and distraction from what's really hurting you and setting you back into the same drama you are trying to avoid. Maybe you are purposely distracting yourself from that past hurt, but if that's the case, then you are purposely attracting yourself into future drama. The thing about pain is, it doesn't go away until you give it attention, treat it, and cure it. Many times, what prolongs the process of getting over someone psychologically, surprisingly, is emotion, the main culprits of which are bitterness and unforgiveness. You may be bitter about someone leaving you in a relationship, or how bad you were treated in the relationship which forced you to leave. Bitterness is caused by you blaming the other person for what you feel. What you feel is a choice, your choice. No one can make you feel a certain way. So if you can choose to be bitter, in the same way, you can choose to accept what you feel and have joy. Being bitter leads to unforgiveness, which begins the downward spiral of your life. This is because you allowing someone else to control what you feel causes you to hold in your positive energy as a defense mechanism. You tell yourself you won't let that person who hurt you off the hook. Then that person turns into the next person, and the next, etc. To forgive means that you understand that that person was being who they are, whether they meant to hurt you or not. You are forgiving them for your sake, not theirs. So in turn, you must also make conscious efforts in modifying your behavior to not be overly defensive, withdrawn, or haughty, but to be open to ideas, conversational, and pleasant. A changed perspective accompanied with the modified behavioral efforts will leave no room for bitterness or any downward spiral as you are catering to your own preservation and well-being. Take it upon yourself to educate yourself about yourself and the opposite sex, from the opposite sex. Being as that we are discussing psychology, that would be a perfect subject to study personally. You must know how your brain operates in order to understand it and help yourself. Take out the time to excavate your upbringing. Take a look at your parents and the way they treated you and or each other. How were you treated in school amongst your peers? What was it in that other person that attracted you to that past relationship? What was it in you that attracted you to that person? What was it that you allowed in the beginning of the past relationship, and why did you allow it? Where in that past relationship did it start to fall apart? Whose fault was it that it fell apart? Remember, be honest with yourself. In this phase, counseling and therapy are a healthy choice. Yes, I said it. Going through counseling or therapy could possibly shorten the amount of time it would take for you to move on. Being that the signs of psychological baggage from a previous relationship are difficult to detect within yourself. Calling upon a trained, licensed professional will provide optimal results in getting over your past. There is nothing shameful or embarrassing about counseling and therapy, despite what your culture or society as a whole imposes upon you. The need for counseling or therapy is not a weak attribute, but a strengthening one. Though we have entered this world alone, we don't live on this world alone. No great person has accomplished anything alone. If you are dealing with things that are psychologically retarding the progression of your soul, be honest with yourself and admit that you need help. Phase 3. Logistical disconnect. The last phase in getting over someone is the longest, but most rewarding. This phase overlaps the other phases as soon as the relationship ends. Logistical disconnect is rewarding because it doesn't require much thought and introspection as the other phases. For some people, This phase may end sooner than the psychological disconnect, albeit they may have more resources at hand, yet it is still a phase they must endure. For those with the lack of particular resources, the logistical disconnect may be trying because of the dependency you had on that partner, or the dependency they had upon you. Depending on how much you invested in the relationship, once you come out of it, you may have to undergo an administrative change. There may have been a financial dependency, whereas one of you worked while the other stayed home, or both worked but one handled the bills. One of you may have done chores around the house while the other transported the kids to school and activities. When departing a relationship, the responsibilities are no longer shared and now reside upon you, depending on how the responsibilities are distributed once the relationship ends. You may now have to pull all your bills alone, or not have anyone else to take the kids to school. You may have to cook and clean by yourself, or worse yet, you may have to move out or move in with someone else, or not have anywhere to stay. You may have to go through a divorce and divide up assets, and have to pay certain charges pertaining to that divorce. These examples sound depressing, but this is not the circumference of what a rebound is all about. Now, when facing these types of administrative situations, you would naturally get the urge to go back into the relationship or rebound prematurely for the sake of dependency. Like the saying says, it's cheaper to keep her, quote unquote. But think about it. You've come this far, not forgetting everything you went through in the past relationship. Not to mention the clutter and confusion that dating prematurely would bring you. Coming into the logistical disconnect is a sign of true progression. It is a milestone in your overall quest for joy, not happiness. Remember, joy is internal and eternal. Happiness sways with the circumstance. When you have logistically disconnected, you are now able to say that if for any reason you would decide to get back in that previous relationship, it wouldn't be for the means of survival or livelihood, which is quite comforting in a sense. Understand that we all have a hierarchy of psychological needs, the primary of which is food, clothing, and shelter. Next is security. With security being a psychological need, the question is, does it really exist? You can always be financially stable without a threat being imminent whatsoever. But no one can say that nothing can happen to put an end to that security. However, this is no excuse to be paranoid or pessimistic, but motivation to be realistic and positive. The security that you are striving for is within yourself. It is being able to know that whatever predicament you allow yourself to be in, you are capable of coming out of it victoriously. So for your sake, don't allow it. Relapse. So you may have endured the struggles of handling logistical matters by yourself. You may have gotten over the person emotionally or psychologically. But what happens if you get a little lonely? Some time has passed and you figure the person you were with may have matured more or isn't the same person anymore. Like I said, people change, but they don't change overnight. When times are hard, going to what's comfortable seems like the elementary thing to do, especially when that person is making sentimental efforts to contact you to come back at your weakest moments. The main question is, why did you break up in the first place? Take into account how hard and long it took you to get out of the relationship and get over that person. So do you really think that person is going to go through the trouble of altering their character just to get you back, especially when they have nothing else to lose by not changing? It would be understandable if the breakup is on good terms, but if it wasn't, there is no guarantee that getting back together will make it better or change anything. For that person to have changed, they would also have to change their perception of you and their relationship with you. They would have to hold you and your relationship in a higher regard than they once did before. And even if they do, can you guarantee they won't revert to the same behavior once a situation arises that triggered the response it did before? It's always noble to suggest a couple, quote-unquote, working it out. The thought of it all would seem like a warm ending to an intense story. But people are only in your life for a season, and relationships are meant for you to learn from, not necessarily for you to go back to someone. You must understand that the damage is done. Hinting back, teasing, or flirting with the thoughts of what used to be is a regressive trap, no matter how good the sex was. Picture looking for something valuable in a large garbage can, sort of like searching for a good memory in a bad relationship. Now that valuable item is at the very bottom of the can, so what do you have to do? Take out all the trash and dig to the very bottom to get it. Once you finally get it, now what? Yep, you have to go through the trouble of putting all that trash right back in the garbage can. In the end, you find yourself asking, was it worth it? See, relapsing is too much of a gamble because it's more of a deceiving lure into you backtracking towards what you've worked so hard to get away from. You have more to lose than the person you broke up with. If you can be friends, be friends. If you can't, then don't. Remember, you're an overcomer, but you're also human. Even Superman had kryptonite. Step 3. Rebound. The fact is, you are rebounding regardless of whether you want to or not. Don't misconstrue the true definition of a rebound with the derogatory connotation society has given it. Denial will only make you feel worse, as well as worsen your behavior. The fact that you are rebounding doesn't necessarily mean that you are compensating for a failed relationship in the past, but that you are making an effort to move on. Now, is this new rebound relationship going to last? Probably not, being that this is the first person you are intimately engaging with when your last recollection of intimacy was with a person in which so much damage has been done. And in most cases, you may just be compensating for what was missed in the previous relationship. Let's not forget to mention the embarrassment of your friends and family acknowledging that failed relationship, which may be negatively motivating you to force this new relationship in order to prove or show off, quote unquote, to them that you aren't the failure. And must we not forget to mention trying to prove or disprove every negative tag that ex-partner may have labeled upon you, or even make them jealous. Understand that a past relationship is only the way you look at it. If you perceive it as being failed, then you're a lot less likely to learn from it. People are only in your life for a season. Therefore, that relationship didn't fail. It simply lasted as long as it was meant to. Whatever the case may be, that first rebound relationship will be rocky, jaded, and premeditated to say the least. However, accepting what it is and understanding that you're going to date eventually, and this is a phase you must overcome, will make the transition much smoother. It's just too bad that new partner is put in a position where they have to endure this phase with you. Step 3. Living single. First of all, there is nothing wrong with being single as long as you don't want to be. Society has trained us to think that we haven't accomplished anything if we haven't gotten married and have had children. Truth be told, some people are jaded and don't see marriage as a reality for them, so they settle just for having a child. Some people are afraid of the thought of never getting married, so they rush into it and force it. Most people, when they date, marriage is all they talk about, but yet they're always single. Realize there is no badge of honor to being able to say that you have someone on your arm. Dating is something that mustn't be contrived or premeditated. Dating must be mastered naturally, as walking or eating. It isn't something you force or think about. You will date for the rest of your life. You get married once, or at least you ought to. If you put the same enthusiasm into marriage as you do dating, your marriage will never fail. The people who want to date the most are typically the ones who should date the least. Many times, being single is most beneficial for some people. They may be striving to establish themselves logistically, or they may be still battling with personal issues, not just from a past relationship, but from childhood. Being single is an opportunity, not a curse. It has its ups and downs in the same way a relationship does. Yet you must understand that you must be complete within yourself to be in a relationship. A relationship doesn't and shouldn't complete you. And being single is the perfect opportunity to be complete. Step 3. Hustle hard. A friend once told me, life is 90% hustle, 10% relationship. So if you're hustling 95% of the time, how good are you going to be in a relationship? She also went on to say that your relationship is a vacation from the world. Quite poignant if you ask me. When you think about it, as natural as a relationship ought to be in your life, it still needs to be facilitated. As I mentioned in my previous book, Leave the Fairy Tales Up to Disney, The Reality of Dating. It is important to evaluate the status of your life and determine whether you have time, energy, and money set aside to facilitate a new relationship, or if you're still a work in progress. If your desire is to be married for the first time or the second time, understand that love is a feeling. However, marriage is a business. You are being legally recognized by the government as an official couple, with all fiscal benefits. Marriage may be a spiritual commitment, but it is a legal binding agreement. What's yours is now ours, especially if you divorce, which we won't anticipate in this book because you'll make the right and best decision for yourself. With all this responsibility considered, marriage is a business, but it is definitely not a hustle. Getting married and or having kids won't make a relationship better or keep someone with you. And selling out your happiness for financial gain in a relationship is not prostitution. It is suicide. Step 3. Fear. It's one thing to get over someone. It's another thing to prepare your mind and heart for a new relationship. Fear only comes from your past. Therefore, it is always a conflict with a new relationship, being that it is in your future. You may be afraid of commitment, pressure, boredom, restriction, or cheating. But if you look at everything I've mentioned, these things are all the negative aspects of a relationship. When you only pay attention to negativity, that is all you'll get. Just like anything, there are two sides. If you don't focus on negativity, you will focus on positivity in a relationship. For example, companionship, cooperation, compatibility, submission, etc. In relationships, fear has different forms and arises at different times. You may feel trapped and want to rebel and cheat. You may be afraid of losing that partner, so you overdo things and in turn push them away. You may be insecure about your partner cheating and feel they are more attractive or wealthier than you, and so you lash out at them and push them away this way also. You may be afraid that your sex won't be as good, or you won't always be able to provide the way you'd like, so you go to extremes to compensate. Accept the fact that your fear is natural, because fear is necessary for survival. It is when those memories and habits arise in a similar way to what we discussed in Psychological Disconnect, where fear becomes pathological and detrimental to that new relationship. Understand what you can control and what you can't control. You do not have an S on your chest, and no one else does. Identify your fear and discuss it with your new partner, only if they are mature enough to handle it, to relieve the tension of shame and uncertainty. If they aren't mature enough, don't stay in the relationship and be withdrawn. This is simply a sign that you need to be out of the particular relationship and by yourself. Focus upon what you are good at, like I mentioned about positivity. It isn't your duty to keep someone, quote unquote, or make them happy. If you are in a relationship, it is your duty to pour out your love and affection and do what you deem as being responsible for, to the best of your ability and control. If you've never been loved, shown affection, or been responsible for anything, stay out of a relationship and find out what those things are. You can't give what you never had. Spare yourself and that person the heartache and pain. If you've done all the right things and that partner isn't happy, it is their problem, because nothing you do will solve it. You can help, but that's about it. When you can't control someone or something, to try to control it and force the situation will only make the situation worse. Closing. Number 1. Relationships are meant to make your life easier and more productive. Number 2. Just like anything, you must always know where you stand, what you're getting into, and when to get out of it. Number 3. Don't make long-term decisions based off short-term emotions. Number 4, you can't take care of anyone if you can't take care of yourself. Number 5, when you give a gift, give it because you want to give it, and it pleases you to please your partner, not because you expect something in return. Number 6, the only way you will not be taken advantage of is if you know what you're worth. Number 7, when someone gives you a gift, say thank you and mean it. Number 8, learn what love is and what it isn't. Number 9, understand that there is more to a relationship than just love. Number 10, protecting yourself doesn't mean being defensive. Number 11, opening up doesn't mean opening up about what you want to open up about. Number 12, if you're not ready to open up, then you're better off single until you are ready. Number 13, your new partner will not be perfect. Number 14, I repeat, your new partner will not be perfect, but they should be different than the previous relationship. Number 15, don't let your past relationship guide the way you select a new partner. Number 16, if you try to one-up that past relationship, the new relationship will be in vain. Number 17, if what you are attracted to is hurting you, then you are hurting you. Number 18, don't be desperate to get married and have kids under any circumstances. Number 19, I repeat, don't be desperate. Number 20, television and movies lie to you. Number 21, society and religion lies to you. Number 22, be yourself. Number 23, allow everyone around you to be themselves. Number 24, learn how to accept the truth. Number 25, accept the truth. Number 26, the truth is inside you. Number 27, God is inside you. Chapter 10, Before God. For the sake of explanation, we'll lightly, and I stress lightly, endeavor the origins of marriage in the Bible. Much of the Bible has influenced the culture of the Western Hemisphere, as well as Europe and some parts of the Middle East. Religion is important mainly because it sets the guidelines by which culture and tradition develops. It is tradition and culture that influence our perception of a society, establishing the quote-unquote norm in a sense. In the early Old Testament scripture of the Bible, the Israelites were a refugee nomadic tribe set on its survival and establishment as a nation. In order to establish themselves as a nation, they needed to set rules for order and control, being as that the people had no government. This is the reason why, if you read early Old Testament scripture, it's mainly a bunch of do's and don'ts. In order to root some sort of fear in enforcing the rules, they had to hold it unto God to persuade the people to abide by them. So in turn, religion became government. And the do's meant you're going to heaven, and the don'ts meant you're going to hell. Hence, the fear implemented into the people. The old and the new. If you look across history, throughout the centuries, religion and government have always been in a love-hate relationship, even to this day. So what does this have to do with marriage? Marriage was and is one of the key components to establishing a nation, as it is the foundation of the family. Typically, a man and woman bear child or children and raise them together, giving them the nurturing and development to become productive citizens towards the betterment of the nation as a whole. Being as that it was so important, so much emphasis was put on it. Ceremonies, monies, planning, celebrations, social gatherings, worship, etc. were all placed upon the union of just one man and one woman. But just like the telephone game, over time the reason behind the emphasis gets lost in the pageantry itself. Because of all the tradition and fear, people get more caught up in the jubilee than the purpose itself, and then the ceremonies and such become more important than the relationship itself. In the Old Testament, a religious government was established with a bunch of do's and don'ts. But if you look at the New Testament, you will see the contrast in tone, whereas it became more flexible towards the guidelines of marriage and even divorce. It's as if it became more realistic, whereas the do's and don'ts of trying to control people became less realistic. So it seems as though all of this religion and tradition is ultimately built upon fear. If anything, fear is paralyzing, a reverse to life itself, unprogressive. If the only constant in life is change, how can fear lead to progress and change? Exactly, it can't. Chapter 11. What is marriage? Am I suggesting we should completely do away with the institution of marriage? Don't be silly. The purpose of marriage is noble in and of itself, but must be reevaluated. Now that we've gotten that brief history lesson out of the way, let's ask ourselves what marriage truly is, being that people have lost sight of the purpose of it. I mentioned that in the early part of the Bible, religion established government. So today, the church establishes much of what we perceive the institution of marriage to be. The church tells us that should a couple come before the altar or before God and make vows to one another in the witness of an ordained minister and a random person, then their marriage is considered holy and under God's blessing. And should they not go under these procedures or break their vows, quote-unquote, before God, their marriage is doomed to fail, enforcing the, quote-unquote, struck by lightning perception, whereas you must follow a certain vain protocol to have, quote-unquote, good karma, regardless of whether your heart is in the process or not. Church and state. In this day and age, we happen to have a government in which our legislative and judicial branches are upheld in a court of law. This is also where the institution of marriage is upheld for the procurement of a nation, as religion did in the Old Testament. The court system tells us that regardless of what religious protocol was undergone, in order for that marriage to be recognized by the government of the land and receive all the benefits and privileges thereof, they must go through a licensing agreement, which binds both parties to each other. Within this licensing agreement, they must abide by the guidelines set by that court, most of which being fidelity. Should they dishonor those guidelines or split up for any reason, they may face the repercussions of payments and the surrender of assets made to a set party on a basis set by and enforced by the court itself, sort of like a business agreement. This is why if you were to ask a lawyer and a pastor what marriage is, they tell you two different things. But judging by the origins of the marital institution, it would make sense for these people in such diametric positions to have such different perceptions on the same thing. I pointed out the different perceptions of the court and the church not to prove either wrong or right, but to create a foundation in explaining where we can possibly take this institution and go awry. One perception of marriage would seem drabber and less enticing as opposed to the other, that being the perception of the courts being more cold and depressing than the perception of the church. Yet some people who subscribe to the marriage perception of the church do it in vain. Perception is reality. The question is which perception is more inconsistent. Now let's be real. We're not going to get struck by lightning for breaking any vow, and many couples never go to an altar and are just fine. Now should you break the agreements made with another party set by the courts, you will face a very tangible repercussion logistically. Bad debt and credit hurt a lot more than a bad conscience. After all, it is only in your mind. Do keep in mind that neither doctrines, whether courts or church, have ever stopped a person from cheating, leaving, stealing, killing, or destroying any and everything we've come to know a marriage to be. This is where the reality sets in. Since we can't control anyone religiously or legally, we shouldn't try. And despite what religion tells you, no one has to be together. The reality is that getting married doesn't change the actual relationship itself. It only changes the legal status of the former boyfriend and girlfriend. If anything changes, it would probably be the attitude of either spouse after getting the backing of the government on their now officially recognized relationship. The security of collateral after heartbreak can be much of a confidence builder, and even a comfort zone. We've all heard the stories of spouses changing for the worse after their nuptials, letting their bodies go, causing extra and unnecessary drama, or just stopping the nice, thoughtful things they used to do. Many times, that spouse thinks that the other spouse isn't going anywhere, because if they do, they can burn them with the government backing. I jokingly call it a license to act crazy. It seems as though they forget what their vows meant at the altar, but so conveniently remember the backing of the courts whenever they get ready. Chapter 12. Sins of the Fathers. Because of religious tradition, much of our perceptions of marriage get handed down to us by family, friends, and society. It's force-fed to us, even in single-parent, unwed homes. We even give it nicknames, quote-unquote, the boy, the girl, the dog, and the picket fence, the Partridge Family, the Honey, I'm Home, the Cosby Show, etc. We see it everywhere we go. The media tells us this is how we should live. Our friends tell us this is how we want to live. Our family tells us this is how we're going to live. So therefore, it makes complete sense as to why we would be so persistent in mimicking such inconsistent ideologies in our personal lives. What the norm that we mimic gives us is a certain protocol, whereas the couples make vows, goes on a honeymoon, comes back and lives together in eternal bliss. The sex will always be amazing, and any problem the couple faces can be overcome, simply because they have God on their side, because of their religious vows. Despite our mimicking, we cannot ignore or deny the examples set before us. Many of us come from homes with dysfunctional relationships, abusive relationships, unloving relationships, etc. Not to mention single-parent homes where there wasn't much of an example of a relationship at all. Even if you've come from a fairly decent home, being that no family is perfect, there is likely a chance that you're bound to come across at least one person from those aforementioned circumstances. And even though you may have it all together, the person you date may not. But if you read Leave the Fairy Tales Up to Disney, The Reality of Dating, and Rebounding the Right Way, you'd know how to spot those issues way ahead of time. Hence, in this case, every relationship you get into will not be perfect. And if nothing in this world is perfect, a marriage title will not make it perfect either. We live in a different day and age, and the concept of a relationship is foreign to a lot of people. And because we live in a different day and age, we mustn't do away with the marital institution altogether, but we must go about it differently. The older generation has enough skeletons in their closet and crosses to bear. What is for them is for them. We shouldn't obligate ourselves to bear their burdens by repeating their cycles. Whether you've had good or bad or no example at all of what a relationship is, you can only put out what you've been given. Mimicking an ideology means nothing if you don't know how to maneuver the vicissitudes of a relationship. Much of the lack of knowledge or no knowledge at all on managing a relationship and dealing with the opposite sex comes from our examples. So in the same way a relationship between a boyfriend and girlfriend is liable to fail for these reasons, what makes a husband and wife any exception? Chapter 13. Married to the Money. Marriage is considered an institution, and the word institution is synonymous with the word business. Anyone knows that if you're not educated or have an understanding on business, you have no business in it, no pun intended. Despite the religious origin, legally, marriage is operated like a business. Therefore, if you do not understand business, you should not get married. Like I described earlier, the couple is conjoined by a binding agreement to a set of conditions. Similarly, All deals between businesses or business constituents are constructed this way. Let's think. You're agreeing to be legally bound to someone for the rest of your life, but you don't understand what you're getting into? Now, if marriage is a business, ask yourself, would you do business with your partner? You may feel as though you shouldn't put a price on a personal partnership, but if you wouldn't do business with your partner, then why would you marry them? Going commercial. Because marriage is a business, it is highly susceptible to commercialism, just as holidays and other social events, i.e. Christmas, Valentine's Day, high school proms, etc. Because of the profitability of the institution of marriage, there is a lot of commercial pressure. Along with the already ensuing pressures of the friends and family, commercial media is the straw that breaks the camel's back. We are bombarded with the advertisements and subliminal messages on rings, dresses, planners, cakes, etc. And that's just the wedding ceremony. Not only is much emphasis put into an unnecessary ceremony, but much money is as well. Most couples and families go into debt just to impress for an occasion. Never mind the symbolic sacredness of it all. When you think about it, any ceremony itself isn't for the sake of those participating in the celebration, but for the audience. A wedding is a novel celebration of couple and family joining together, which can't be replicated by any other experience. But it only lasts one day. A marriage is meant to last unto death, of either or both partners. So which would be the wiser choice to invest in, the wedding or the marriage? Let's also take into account the costs and benefits of getting married and divorced, which boost the economy. Lawyers, judges, and tax accountants, just to name a few, all profit from this institution. And not to mention, in most cases, it is more expensive getting out of marriage than to get in one. There are more cons to getting married than pros. It's just that the pros outweigh the cons. What's mine is mine. When two partners make a deal into business with each other, both of their funds must be commingled. So to understand business means understanding money and how to manage it with your partner. That management also includes sharing of monies and assets, as well as liabilities, now that your welfare is conjoined with theirs. Are you willing to take on whatever benefit or lien that comes with that person's name? Are you informed of the monies and assets and liabilities of your partner as well as your own? These are some of the things you need to know before you legally bind yourself to someone, because whether you want to accept it or not, it will affect you. What are yours and that person's psychology, habits, and integrity concerning money? Do you keep a secret stash and shop behind your partner's back, recklessly spending money allocated for responsibilities on nonsensical guilty pleasures? Are you careless to calculate and plan your spending? Do you not prioritize saving? Do you make senseless decisions that cause you to lose money? When you talk about money to your partner, are you vague or do you talk about money at all? You can't ignore these types of questions, but most of all, you can't ignore money when dealing with marriage, whether you like it or not. When you make that agreement to be together for the rest of your lives, that also includes your livelihood. Your livelihood is your business, and when you come into contract with your partner, it now becomes their business too. I always say there is a two-headed monster concerning relationships, money and sex. If you can tackle one of these issues, that's more than half the battle. Prenup sounds so romantic. So are you really doubting the longevity of the relationship when bringing up a prenuptial before marriage? Would you rather sign a prenuptial or a divorce? What is the purpose of a prenuptial and why are most women so adverse to it? And yes, I meant to mention women and not men. A prenuptial agreement is an agreement made by a couple before they marry concerning the ownership of their respective assets should the marriage fail. Now, there would be no need for any provision or division of assets and support if the conditions were set in the marriage contract itself. However, the marriage contract establishes the conditions of the union of partners, not the conditions after the divorce. and it would be most wise to establish these conditions before the marriage and not after, hence the term prenuptial. Prenuptial agreements aren't only for the opulent. Actually, it would suit someone of less fortune more to sign a prenuptial, being as that they would be less able to afford the risk. That's the key word, risk. Marriage isn't exempt from this, just like anything else in life. Despite what perceptions you may have, in business, you must always account for risk, as to how big the risk is or whether you can afford it or not. If you're going to assess risk, you must assess your partner. So when assessing the risks, a prenuptial agreement would make the best sense. The cause for such adversity to the topic arises in lieu of the contemplation of failure. Now, of course, failure of any kind, especially in a relationship, wouldn't be as desirable by any means. However, let's not dismiss it as a reality and a possibility. As undesirable as losing a relationship is, losing money and assets are just as undesirable, if not more. And when dealing with the business of marriage, it is very desirable to be realistic, as opposed to being quote-unquote romantic. How much of an unromantic jerk can you be if you're being realistic and protecting your finances? There is a difference between being negative and being realistic, just as there is a difference between expecting something to fail and accepting the risk that something can fail. Being realistic is understanding the good as well as the bad, not just the bad. Now, for those adverse women, if there are women out there who keep secret stashes of money from their partners, what would elicit such inconspicuous precaution? Obviously, it would be for the same reason a man would propose a prenuptial agreement. So deductively, if a woman can keep a secret stash, then logically, she should agree to sign a prenup. Chapter 14. On Common Ground. Now that you understand the nature of a marriage and you've assessed your partner in a business sense, do the two of you share the same attitudes and perceptions on relationships as well as marriage? Why are we so desperate when it comes to marriage? What's wrong with never getting married? Why do we look down on people who haven't? Where does this attitude come from? Most of the couples who shouldn't get married are always the ones fighting or rushing to get married. It's as if they try to spite themselves when they know they shouldn't do it. Do you really think you're proving your friends and family wrong when you force getting married, when you know you may have glaring issues in your relationship? Don't put a legal title on something that is already shaky. Who is that going to hurt in the end? For some women, they may not really want a marriage, they just want a wedding, even though most won't admit it. For some men, they may not want a relationship, they just want a companion, when they want them, even though most won't admit it. Why is it such a nightmare in our society to die single? Where is the failure in that? It's understandable why someone would date for years, investing a lot of time, energy, and money into a relationship, and feel the urge to pressure a marriage. But you don't have to marry anyone, nor should you feel like you have to marry anyone. There is no point in staying together when you know you don't want to because of the title. If you can discuss marriage, you should also be able to discuss divorce. It's just as much a reality. It's also understandable why divorce is such a fear in the dating community. But if people were less afraid of it, it would occur a lot less. As opposed to avoiding the topic altogether, talking about it will lessen the fear. Just be sure to discuss your relationship way more. The legal process of a divorce can be dreadful, depending on the scale of the relationship. But that all depends on how you choose to perceive it. Is divorce really a failure? How you perceive it is how you receive it. Worth the wait. Companionship is like a drug. What is worse, dragging someone along for years and not marrying them, or giving them an ultimatum to marry? There is nothing wrong with going for what you want, but also ask yourself why you want it. There's also a way about going for what you want. Men don't like unnecessary pressure in relationships, especially when it comes to marriage. Remember, marriage is one of the most emotionally engaging experiences for a man. mainly because it is the most extreme display of commitment, which requires discipline, patience, and character. Pressuring or putting an ultimatum on marriage deadens the experience for a man because it's not his own volition. If you're going to go about proposing what you want from your partner, the earlier the better. Time lapse is a gesture, whether you know it or not. It shows passiveness. Staying in a relationship for long periods of time and never addressing a matter signals to your partner that you're okay with things being the way they are. Express what you want early and why. And when you express it as a thought, not an emotion. This way you give your partner a chance early on to let them know who and what they're getting into in a respectful and loving manner. Despite marriage being a legal title, it is still a life decision as well as a life-changing decision. No life decision warrants pressure under any circumstance. In a relationship, you have the rest of your lives to make a decision to marry someone, so pressuring it is unnecessary. If you really feel that you have to get married, why? And why should your partner feel the same way? If you feel as though you're not going to get what you want and or your relationship isn't going anywhere, do what is best for you. I know as you read along, you may get a cold feeling, as though the magicalness of marriage has been reduced to a callous arrangement, solely for the sake of a drab coexistence between two people. That's far from it. When you think about it, it's that whimsical magicalness that has gotten so many people into tangled webs of matrimony that has been so hard for them to get out of. Chapter 15. The Agreement. Believe it or not, just like everything else, there is a difference between the way women and men look at the act of getting married. It's ironically reversed when you think about it, though. Men look at it as an emotional transition, a gesture of sheer commitment and devotion to a woman they've selectively considered worthy of their love. Now, you would think a woman would take this approach, but it's sorely opposite. Women are innately nurturers, and in order for that nurturing to be cultivated, they must have security. Hence, women innately seek security. This is what a legal marriage title provides for them. It's that much more of a guarantee that the man in which they entrust their livelihood to, or with, will be less inclined to leave them aloof. And should they do so, that woman would have an entitlement to that man's asset as collateral for such abandon. Men marry for love and sex. Women marry for convenience and security. When it comes to the act of getting married, women are what I like to call hustlers. And for some, dating and marriage is a game. They seem to have the upper hand in that they've been contemplating a wedding and marriage from the time they were small children, simply because society's impression on women says, in order for them to actualize their womanhood, they must marry and bear children. The thought of a wedding is also romanticized in children's fairy tales, folk tales, storybooks, and social media. So when contemplating marriage, a woman has already undergone the emotional transition that a man is newly experiencing. She's just waiting for him to catch up, so it seems as though she's hustling. Now don't get me wrong, there are those women who perceive the act the same way men do. But even most of those women who say they perceive it the way men do, when put in a circumstance I previously mentioned, would change their demeanor. It's not that these women are liars. It's just that they've never looked into why they think the way they do. Men also. See, why would divorce exist if marriage was so foolproof? It's simply because not every relationship is meant to last forever. This goes back to being realistic, as I mentioned earlier. Forever? Forever ever? Forever ever? Of course, you and your partner are so viciously in love that nothing can tear you apart, speaking sarcastically. But when you think about it, just as not every relationship is meant to last forever, every relationship is possible of splitting up, no matter how close the two are. So if not every relationship is meant to last forever, then why even be together or get married? First of all, it's not for you to know if your relationship is meant to last forever. You will never find that out. The only thing you have control of is the present moment. So make the best of that and appreciate it. So with that in mind, now let's look at why you should get married. When you're getting married, you are agreeing to join names with your partner and everything that comes with that. Like I described in the previous chapter, nothing more, nothing less. It's an agreement. You can make living arrangements, living together or apart, delegate logistical responsibilities within the household, and have exclusive sex with your partner. But a marriage license provides the backing of the government on everything I just mentioned. When you think about it, most married couples are on an agreement anyway. What's love got to do with it, you ask? Nothing. Nothing at all. What is love when you have security? That's why you're getting married, for security. What it is and what you tell yourself it is are two different things. Get in where you fit in. If more people understood what they were getting into, they would take it more seriously and get married less. And if people took marriage seriously, they'd take relationships seriously. If people understood that they're engaging in an agreement backed by the government with serious financial and logistical repercussions that would take years or even decades to recover from, how could they not take it seriously or even contemplate breaching that agreement? Once more people understand what they're getting into, they would make more well-thought, patient, and I stress patient, decisions. They would be more realistic about their decisions and also be mature and honest with themselves on what they can take on and what they can't. And they would actually take it on if they can or forego it and not take it on if they can't. Eventually, less people will get married and fewer divorces will occur. And most importantly, more marriages will last longer. Better families will be cultivated into a better society, into a better nation. Chapter 16. Relationship, not marriage. Every relationship has a 50% chance at failing, no matter how close they are or think they are. The same issues that exist when you are boyfriend and girlfriend will exist when you are husband and wife. Vows at an altar or signing a license doesn't change personal issues, disputes, misunderstandings, and even cheating and abuse, etc. Dealing with those issues head on, communicating, possibly seeking counseling or a proper course of action can help those issues. It takes the couple to work together, and I stress work together. There is no such thing as an unhealthy or bad, healthy or good marriage, being that it is just a title. But there is such a thing pertaining to a relationship. Some good or healthy relationships don't have to go into marriage. The pressure can be insidious. Some couples don't have to move in together. Yes, even if they're married. It's all about what's feasible to each particular couple. If you notice up to this point, I only mentioned love once in this entire book. And you're probably wondering, how could someone write a book about marriage and barely mention love? Like I said before, marriage isn't about love, it's about government. When you think about it, how often does the Bible mention love and marriage in the same context? Too many people are in love with the idea of being in love, and because of this, they lie to themselves to preserve their ideals passed down to them, ruining their lives in the process. If you want to be in love and enjoy your partner, then be in a relationship and don't make marriage such an issue. Love is a feeling. Marriage is a business. So love your business. Marriage only makes the relationship legal. Therefore, what you should be putting focus on is the relationship. There you have it. The relationship is where the love is. The relationship is where the meaningfulness lies. The meaningfulness before God and an altar, the meaningfulness in the vows, and the ring and family. All of the spiritual bonding, devotion, passion, loyalty, and friendship you seek are in a relationship, not a marriage. You need love for a relationship, not for marriage. And as long as you have love in the relationship, then God is always on your side. So with everything I've said in this book, you shouldn't marry for love. I've already explained why you should get married. You should get in a relationship for love. The wedding is simply a celebration of the relationship. If you want to look at it in a particular way, the marriage starts when a couple first meets. The license itself just makes it official. This book is sobering, and for some depressing, but it can also be uplifting. Accepting reality does not mean giving up. It means starting over. It means starting fresh. When you build on truth, whatever you build will last forever. Before you go to any church or any courthouse, make a vow and sign a contract to yourself first. Vow to yourself to take a relationship before a marriage seriously and realistically, to have and to hold, for better, not for worse, for richer, not for poorer, in health, to love and to cherish, till a breakup do you part. You can now pronounce yourself whatever you call yourself to be. Let's wake up.